Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1982 Ford LTD. Up front is a 5.0 liter V8, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I'm super excited to be driving this here LTD for two main reasons. First of all, it's always fun to drive something from this era. I've fallen in love with this era of cars recently. I've been driving a handful of them and I absolutely love each and every one of them. And so I'm excited to show you another one. But this is what the family truckster was based off of. This is what a lot of the police cars of the era were. And this was the era where Ford started to actually downsize their lineup. But we'll talk about that at the end of the video. But before we get on with the rest of the video, if you are interested in helping out the channel, there are some links in the description below for some products that go towards helping the channel. There is a suction cup license plate from Con Plates. There is a fixed OBD2 Bluetooth sensor to help diagnose your car issues, and there is Cash for Cars that helps you sell your vehicle quickly. Again, if you'd like to help out the channel, please click the links in the description below. Let's get on with the video. So let's get back to that 302 under the hood. This is actually a carbureted 302, and while it's technically a 4.9 liter, it was advertised and showed off as a 5 liter because there was a 4.9 liter straight 6 from Ford as well, and they didn't want confusion, and this was still the era where the bigger engine was always better. So a 5.0 sounds better and cooler and more interesting than a 4.9. I'll put the stock horsepower numbers up on the screen. This is a lazy V8. This is not fast. It's not even really that spry, but it's very, very comfortable. It's a very lazy power. And the 5.0 liter marks the start of Ford starting to downsize their engines as well as the sedans. Where previous generations came with the 460 7.5 liter, the 5 liter in comparison is a tiny engine. Like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Nothing really crazy going on there. It shifts decently smooth for being so old. It's almost 40 years old. It's shifting smooth enough. Last but not least, the LTD is rear wheel drive. So let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have very basic gauges. In front of me, I have my speedometer up top with kilometers down below, gear, odometer, and fuel at the bottom, and then of course some warning lights on the outer edge. You can definitely tell this is a 70s, 80s car because 55 is highlighted. There's a square around it because of the national speed limit of 55 miles an hour. And this is pretty typical of 80s cars. So if you're ever quizzed on gauge clusters and you see that 55 is for some reason highlighted or an arrow is pointing to it or there's a box around it, it's probably an 80s car. On the steering wheel, I don't have any buttons or anything, not even a horn. The horn is actually on the headlight stalk off to the left. To the left of me, I do have my headlight switch. On the door, I have my crank for the windows as well as the latch, and that's it. Interestingly enough, the lock for the doors is actually down by the handle as opposed to up above in pretty much every other car. Kind of interesting placement there. Moving into the center, I do have an analog clock that looks very, very nice, very presentable. And I have an aftermarket radio because radios from the 80s don't really keep up with modern tech. And I have my climate controls. Originally, this did have air conditioning. However, a previous owner did remove it, so I am sweating it out today. Luckily, it's the fall, so not too bad. And I do have a little pull-down ashtray and cigarette lighter. Then I do get a mini center console with cup holders, so we will do a big friggin' bottle test, and the LTD passes with this here little center console, which is fantastic. Moving on to the seats. The seats are a bench seat and they're finished in blue leather. They're very, very soft, very comfortable, and I am very, very pleasantly enjoying them right now. This car rides very nice, however, not as nice as the Colony Park Mercury that I just got out of. I would highly recommend watching that video after this one, but it still rides nice nevertheless. Now, I do have back seats, so let's hop around and do a backseat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1982 Ford LTD, and it is very spacious. My knees are not hitting the seats in front of me. I have the nice cushiony leather, the same leather that's found up front there, which is really nice. Plenty of headroom, plenty of knee room, and I have a little ashtray on the back of this here front seat. Thank God, because it's still the 80s and I need my cigarettes every 40 minutes. I don't have a center console or anything like that, and really there's nothing else to report back here. I don't get any features. Same crank windows as found up front. However, the locks on the doors are up top here like a normal car as opposed to up front, but other than that, pretty basic. Now let's take a quick look at the trunk, and then we'll talk about the looks. So around the back of the LTD, and something to point out if you weren't aware, older cars have two different keys. The square one is typically for the ignition, and the circle one is usually for the trunk and doors. So, there we go, and you could seat a family of 5 in this trunk. I mean, absolutely massive trunks. That was a cornerstone of American cars of the era, and of course, this is no different. Huge trunk. Like I said, you could probably put this on Airbnb nowadays and make a decent profit. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I do love the look of this LTD. Now, this actually has a 79 to 80 grille in the front, because the 82 was actually the first year to have the blue Ford oval in the grille as opposed to just saying Ford across the top. So this is an older grille. However, the rest of the car, as we'll do a walk around, is the 1982. And I just love this look. It's very Blues Brothers to me. I know it's not a Dodge Monaco, but it just reminds me of that. And I think overall it looks so cool. It just looks so cool and so late 70s, early 80s. And with that being said, let's get to my final thoughts here on the LTD. Well, I think the LTD is a very interesting car in Ford's history. The reason for that is I recently drove a 1979 Lincoln Continental, and that thing was big. That was a large, humongous car. And in the 70s, cars were large and humongous. But in 1977, Dodge started to downsize their vehicles. And that became a trend for better economy. Everyone was focusing on the oil crisis of the mid-70s. Everyone was kind of scared of that, so downsizing was kind of the way to go. And also, Japanese cars started really entering the market with their little 4-cylinders. So in 1977, Dodge started to downsize. And the reason I say that is because it took 2 years for Ford to respond and start downsizing on their own in 1979. So this here LTD was smaller than the previous generation for the first time in its life. The full-size sedan started to shrink. So if you want to look at this in a sort of grand perspective, this is past the peak. Cars were no longer getting larger, they were getting smaller. Now, to be fair, this is not a small car, but you can't quite jump from a Continental to a Pinto. It has to be gradual. And this is a Panther platformed vehicle. Where have you heard the Panther platform before? Well, it's technically the same lineage and family as the Crown Victoria police cars from the mid to late 2000s. Here is a modified white Crown Victoria. That is also a Panther platform vehicle, of course tweaked and changed over the years, but still a Panther. And so, like the Colony Park I just filmed, this is sort of a over-the-hill car. The 80s were a wild time for cars, and this is a transition of power. This is the equivalent of your first year in college, but coming home on Thanksgiving break and seeing all your friends again. Things are a little different, but it's only been 2 months, so it's kind of the same, but you know it's kind of the last time it's gonna be normal like that. That's how I feel about this here LTD. This is still grasping on to the 70s. And the coolest thing to me is that I personally own a 1985 Mazda RX-7, and the idea that these were the police cars of the time, there was a good chance that my RX-7 was pulled over by one of these back in the day. And this car is just so 80s. This is so early 80s too. This isn't the synthwave, electronic, digitalization era. This is early 80s. And I love it all the same. This is such a cool piece of history. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to John for letting me take out his LTD. This thing is absolutely awesome. I really truly feel like I'm driving a piece of history, and that is all thanks to him. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.